How We Change and 10 Reasons Why We Don't. Chapter 1. How I Got Here. To him who feels himself preordained to contemplation and not to belief, all believers are too noisy and obtrusive. He guards against them. Friedrich Nietzsche. My appreciation for the awesome power of sameness comes from over 30 years of clinical experience. First as a social worker, helping people who had been treated for extensive periods of time. Then as the founder and CEO of a program that works with such individuals. While I've always had a small private psychotherapy practice in which I work with self-sufficient people who need nothing more than a weekly visit, it's the former group, those dealing with severe psychological conditions, who truly taught me about the hidden appeal, the seductive reasonableness of staying the same. It is not easy being a psychiatric patient. Our society tends to stigmatize mental illness, neglects to accommodate people experiencing difficult psychiatric symptoms in schools, workplaces, and neighborhoods, and adopts an overly medicalized approach to behaviors and feelings that don't fit some idealized norm. Shunned by the world, limited in their opportunities, and receiving the unspoken message from so-called mental health experts that they're hopelessly broken, my clients are at the very limits of what we humans can withstand in regard to experiences of personal disappointment and social exclusion. Pushed to these limits, they have important lessons to teach us. While most of us have been lucky enough never to need to learn these lessons so acutely, they are nonetheless filled with universal wisdom. Many of the people I work with find miraculous ways to make changes that enable them to move forward in life despite crushingly demoralizing personal experiences. They get back to school, work, and careers, start exercising again, make friends, enter romantic relationships. Many others, however, turn away from change, seeing sameness as their most trusted sanctuary or ally. Whether propelled to change or to remain the same, all of them have something to teach us about the complex, often paradoxical dynamics of personal change. I started formulating ideas about the dynamics of change as a young social worker in Waltham, Massachusetts, facilitating a therapy group in a day treatment program for people with extensive histories in the mental health system. This was an open group, so new participants were always arriving and old ones leaving. Over time, I began to wonder about a specific issue. Why did participants in the group consistently resist changes in their lives that seemed so obviously positive? I asked the participants this question repeatedly over the years. No matter who was attending my group, their responses were remarkably similar. One night, I sat down and categorized these responses. As I looked at the list, I came to see that each reason a person resisted change had its own internal logic, its own reasonableness. Staying the same began to make sense to me as a course of action, a solution for certain experiences that, in fact, could not be obtained by changing. This was true even in situations in which changing seemed like such an obvious choice. I called the resulting document the 10 Reasons Not to Change, and I shared it with the group. Here they are. Number 1. Staying the same protects you from awareness of your aloneness and sole accountability for your own life. Number 2. Staying the same protects you for the accountability for what's next. Number 3. Staying the same protects you from the unknown. Number 4. Staying the same protects you from your own expectations. Number 5. Staying the same protects you from the expectations of others. Number 6, staying the same protects you from seeing where you are. Number 7, staying the same protects you from the insult of small steps. Number 8, staying the same protects a monument to your pain. Number 9, staying the same protects you from changing your relationship with others. And number 10, staying the same protects you from changing your relationship with yourself. The 10 reasons operated as a powerful tool as we contemplated the places where they felt stuck. Freed from the Tarzan dichotomy of change good, same bad, we were able to place sameness on the table. Think about it, approach it with curiosity, and let it play in our minds. Once we could do that, something remarkable occurred. By imagining sameness as a potential sensible course of action, my clients often found it easier to make changes in their lives. Thinking about not changing and why they may have wanted to stay the same seemed to loosen the restraints to motivation, and to do so in a more effective manner than all the advice or instruction to change. Like Houdini in a straitjacket, relaxing in order to escape, his body compressed in alliance with the pressure belts, chains, and canvas. Moving in the opposite direction from where you want to go often frees you to get there. I began to see the key to change waiting for us within this paradox. Later, I brought the 10 reasons into my private psychotherapy practice with these folks who see me once a week. The 10 reasons had similar results, freeing people up to see their resistance to change as tied to the attractive reasonableness of sameness. I also welcomed the 10 reasons into my own life, finding them to be instrumental in making changes I'd long wanted to make, but never could. My realization about the paradox of change is not new. In fact, it's a reflection of a central value in social work. The adage to start where the client is a root concept in my field and suggests that professionals understand and sit with a person's experience in a non-judgmental manner, rather than push them toward change. The 10 reasons also reflect values in other therapeutic fields, from paradoxical interventions, a fancy term for reverse psychology, in family therapy, where clinicians tell their clients to continue behaviors the clients say they wish to resolve, in order to help these individuals see their often destructive behavior as having its own logic. The tenet in humanistic psychology of unconditional positive regard, the notion in psychotherapy mirrored in Buddhist-oriented approaches of going with the resistance, to an approach used in the addiction field called motivational interviewing, in which the pros and cons of substance use are weighed in non-judgmental conversation with a clinician, as opposed to using a strong, confrontational approach for a supposedly hijacked and thus unreasoning brain. The idea of approaching a person where they are, being inquisitive about why they may want to stay the same, and even thinking about sameness as a reasonable course of action, is not my invention. But I do see the 10 reasons giving form to these larger traditions by breaking resistance to change into 10 smaller units. By doing so, change and sameness become objects you can mentally hold, manage, and shape. Why the 10 reasons are reasonable. For over 2 decades, I kept the 10 reasons in my front pocket, an effective tool I would pull out time and time again that gave me and my clients an understandable frame around experiences of stuckness. There was something reassuring and comprehensible about this tool, the Dewey-like tidiness of a decimal. But over time, I grew to feel the reasons were also a little too pat to capture the very deep and often dark processes undergirding change. What began as an attempt to give form to the behavioral results of the formless anguish of massive disappointment was now something you could count on two hands. It's not that the 10 reasons ever existed in a theoretical vacuum. I always knew they were linked to certain important experiences related to our capacity to hope and to the power of disappointment to injure us in a way that makes us actually fear hoping. In fact, the idea that we could fear hope and that this fear makes us want to stay the same was something that I would talk about freely with people when I discussed the 10 reasons. But it remained theoretical, an interesting idea. That all changed recently. Fear of hope research. In the fall of 2018, I gave a guest lecture on the 10 reasons at a course at Rutgers University at Newark called The Psychology of Emotions, taught by Professor Kent Harbour, a social psychologist who studies psychological resources. Kent lit up when I mentioned my ideas about fearing hope and suggested my otherwise theoretical concept could be scientifically measured and studied. And so began a research collaboration that is confirming lessons I learned from clients regarding their troubled relation to hope. Our research group has been able to show that fear of hope can be reliably measured using a unique scale that lets us determine whether and to what degree people fear hope. Knowledge that is giving us new insight into the relationship between fear of hope and an array of other emotions and ways of thinking. Everything we've discovered provides a very strong explanation for why sameness can appear and can even be a reasonable choice. Our research began to color in the spaces outlined by the 10 reasons not to change for me, illuminating the reasons behind the reasons. Why would we actually resist changes that will so obviously enhance our existences? Because something in our lives has made us fear hoping. That something doesn't have to be some giant disappointment. In fact, it might be something we can't even identify. But it is an experience that whispers to us that it's dangerous to follow hope into action. I'll discuss this in much more detail later, but when you hope for something that you feel is missing in your life. Hope is thus always wrapped up in a kind of tension, the mother of yearning and longing. Hope is about wanting something you lack. That makes hope risky, since acting on your hope and going for it raises the real possibility that you won't succeed at attaining something you feel is missing in your life. And nowhere is the hope-generating tension between where you are right now, not having something you feel is lacking in your life, and where you want to be, having it in your life, more perilous than when you hope for personal change. So that's the brief story of how the 10 reasons not to change formed in my mind, and then became a tool to help people contemplate the changes they want to make. There are, of course, lots of missing elements in this story, ones you don't know about now, many you will learn about later. For now, let's just say it's a very typical story of how one mind noticed something unexplained in its environment, took what it noticed and tried to explain it, forming an idea about it, then playing with that idea, sculpting it into something meaningful and comprehensible. We all do that all the time when novel information appears to us in worlds that seem well-worn and settled. We make this information fit, our minds often obsessively seeking to contain it within an understandable whole. As you'll read in the next chapter, our minds are built with a drive toward wholeness at their core, Understanding that drive is central to understanding personal change. The next chapter is chapter 2, the where you are, where you want to be tension. But we'll save that for next time. Bye for now.